Talking about the struggles of Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, both of their teams at 3-3. Brady did not look good against the Steelers on Sunday. Rodgers, it was the first time during the Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers era where the Packers just got the crap kicked out of them at home by an average at best team, although maybe the Jets are better than average, I don't know. But 27-10 and Sauce Gardner wearing a cheese head. I mean, it was just a weird day for both quarterbacks. So as Sims and I are talking, I just throw out there, let's set the odds. Is there a chance, what's the odds that one of these guys just says, I'm done before the season ends? That's how it came up. And I thought we couched it clearly. But the next thing I know, there's articles out there that Chris Sims says Tom Brady's going to retire during the season. It's like, what the hell is wrong with people? I understand that folks are desperate for maximum content and Brady moves the needle, but there's enough stuff out there that's accurate about Brady that will move the needle without having to make something out of nothing. And I know that we brought up the subject, but it wasn't, is he going to do it? It was just kind of like, hey, if we were setting odds on both of these guys doing it, what would they be and who would be the favorite? And I agree with Chris. Between Rodgers and Brady, if someone was going to do that, it was going to be Brady. So I say that because yesterday at Tom Brady's midweek press conference, he got a question that was completely off base from what Sims and I were discussing, but it set the table for Tom Brady to renew his vows with the National Football League. Have a listen.
Chris Sims, there's been a couple of national talking heads speculating that, Tom is not even going to finish out the season. And I've tried to say that's got to be crazy. I mean, we're here all the time. Can you clarify?
Well, that's really why I'm here. I'm here to announce, finally, you guys pushed me to the brink. No retirement in my future. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
So, I assume there will be retirement at some point. I don't think he's going to die with his cleats on. He will retire at some point, but he's saying he's not going to retire this year. And that's fine. And here's the other thing too, Peter. We know from experience, Tom Brady has told us 90% of the things he says at a press conference is a lie. He doesn't want to tell the truth. He doesn't want to deal with the blowback of telling the truth. More on that coming up in a minute. But you think he's going to stand up there and say, I'm really thinking about, if this season goes sideways and all this stuff I got going on in my life, if we get down to the last 4 or 5 games of the season, it just looks like we're not going to be a serious contender for a Super Bowl. You know what? Maybe I will just tap out and let Blaine Gabbert begin the process of getting ready for next year. He's not going to tell us that. Even if he is thinking about it with just 1% of his brain, he's not going to tell us.
Yeah, when I saw that quote from Chris, I said, Chris is going to be unhappy that he said this, even though it was couched the way it should. Well, if you ask me that question, it's like, yeah. But the one thing that this is the way I view Brady, okay, that once he said, whenever he said it, April, March, I forget, whenever he said it, once he said, I'm coming back, I just think there's I shouldn't say zero, but I think there's an exceedingly low chance that he would do anything but finish out the season, because what he has done is he has told his team, I'm here. I'm not going to abandon ship, no pun intended, with the Bucs. I am not going to do anything to disrespect the game or my place in it. And even if they go down the toilet, I just could never see Brady doing that. People like Jason Light, people like, the Glazers and Todd Bowles, basically this is Todd Bowles' future, and I just think that Brady would never do that, no matter what was going on in his personal life.
But what he is doing, Peter, and we saw this play out last week, he's not as committed as he's been in the past. He's not as walled off from the rest of the world and focused only on football. He left the team last Friday night to go to the owner's wedding. Not his current owner, the owner of the team he used to play for. And then he didn't fly back on his private jet. that night. Not that he owns a private jet, but for all I know, he does. He got enough money to own one if he wants to, but he didn't fly back and show up for meetings and walk through practice Saturday morning. He just said, I'll see you in Pittsburgh. That's not what Tom Brady would have done in past years. And that leads us to the next point, because on his podcast on Monday, he was interviewing Kevin Durant, and they were talking about the commitment that you have to make during football season, basketball season, any professional sports season. It's a long period of time, and it turns your life upside down. You have to turn your life over to it. He said, I almost look at a football season like you're going away on deployment in the military, and it's like, man, here I go again. There's only one way to do it. You have to be all in, and it's kind of strange that he said it on Monday because he just wasn't all in over the weekend, Peter. But before we play his comments from yesterday about it, I understood what he was saying. I know he got dragged for it, but I understood what he was saying, because if you're doing it the right way, it is like you're completely removed from your life. And no, it's not the same as being in the military. You're not protecting the country. You're not getting paid peanuts in comparison to what a pro athlete makes, but you have to be willing to surrender your life to the cause of winning as many football games as possible and trying to win a Super Bowl. It didn't strike me as something at the time that he said it that he's going to have to worry about getting blowback, because I understood what he meant, but others didn't.
Look, there was a lot written and said about what happened last weekend, and I think people need to understand two things. Number one, it's fair game to say that he should have been there Saturday morning. Absolutely, unequivocally fair game to say that. However, about Friday, I read so much about, taking Friday off and going to this wedding. I mean, the way NFL teams operate, most of them are out of their buildings by 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's an early day everywhere on Friday. And people get to do family things on Friday night, coaches, players, all that stuff. So Tom Brady went to practice on Friday. He went to meetings on Friday. And then when he left, instead of just going home, he got in a plane and went to New York for Kraft's wedding. I don't find that odd, weird, distracting at all. However, he does leave himself open for criticism when he doesn't go back to the team on Saturday, without any question. And I guess I just look at it this way, Mike. Brady, I've always thought, is a really, really interesting, different case than almost anybody else in football, because he's one of these guys who his entire career has demonstrated an insane commitment to the game. And I think now he's 45 years old, and he looks at life right now. And life sometimes intercedes, as it did in training camp with the 10 days off, as it did here with wanting to pay homage to a guy who was his boss, basically, for 21 years. So I can't really kill him for this at all, even missing Saturday. But if I were him, and again, I don't know what other extenuating circumstances there were, but if I were him, I probably would have gone back to Tampa, got there at 1:30 in the morning and got up and done my deal with the team on Saturday.
And again, he explained on Monday that he views football season like being deployed in the military. And I understand why people reacted to it. Even though I understand what he said, what he was trying to say, he didn't say it clearly enough, and it caused some blowback, because people who have been on military deployment, or family members on military deployment, where you physically aren't there and you're not back for months, and you're worried about their health and well-being the entire time, and you're not making much money at all for it, it is a far different experience. So I understood why people were upset. I just didn't make the connection in my brain, because I get what he's saying. For him, you do have to view it like two different lives, and you're checking out of your normal life for 6 months if you're doing it the way that he does it, which is obsessed, and the way he used to do it before this year. So anyway, here he is yesterday, right out of the gates at his press conference. No questions asked. He wanted to address his comments and apologize for them. Have a listen.
Before we start, can I say one thing?
Yes, absolutely.
Earlier this week, I made a statement about playing football and the military, and it was a very poor choice of words. And I just want to express that to any sentiments out there that people may have taken it in a certain way. So I apologize. And to be honest, I don't really want to expand on it too much because I don't feel like.
Wanted to give you that
Yeah,
opportunity in
thank
case
you.
did anymore.
I appreciate it. I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for everyone who served, and in the end, we play a game, and the military is defending our country as two very different things, and I shouldn't have made the comparison.
Yeah, he didn't want to expand on it because he's probably perplexed by the fact that it became a thing because it wasn't anything remotely close to what he meant, and he didn't communicate it well. And guess what, Tom? You're going to be making $37.5 million to be able to speak extemporaneously without stepping in crap. Good luck. Seriously. That's his next job at Fox. He's going to have to be able to speak without thinking ahead of time. He's going to have to think as he chooses his words. And it's the kind of thing where when you say something like that and you don't even realize it's going to cause a mess, it really does force someone to take a step back and say, wait a minute, how did I miss that? How did I not realize that that was a third rail that I should have stayed away from? So
Yeah.
I think he was rattled by that. I think he was rattled by it. The fact, the way he communicated at the get-go, and then when he sees it, no, thanks. I'm not talking about it. Nope, thank you, but I'm not expanding on it. I really do think it has him wondering, man, how did I get myself into that mess, and how am I going to avoid that in the future when I am speaking off the cuff in 30-second chunks when I'm the number one analyst at Fox at some point in the future?
Mike, when I heard that the other day, my eyebrows were raised, and I said, boy, he's going to get some stuff for this. But in reality, it doesn't, in my opinion, I understand why people would say, oh, that's totally ridiculous. Somebody who goes on an 8-month deployment is away. He's in a foreign land. His life is in danger, all that stuff. And I get it. But there are a lot of jobs that require almost, 70 to 80 hours a week of dedication, of always thinking about it, of always doing it. And of course, it's not like the military where you go away and your life is in danger. And of course, you're just playing a game. But the point is that starting on, let's say, July 23rd, for the next 6 to 7 months, your life is not your own. And, that obviously, if he had it to do over again, he would not make that comparison. But there are some similarities between the two things. There just are. It's not disrespectful to the military to say that there are, but obviously it's not a good comparison to make publicly.
When it speaks to how maniacal he had been in the past. He said in the Tom versus Time documentary, if you want to beat me, you have to be willing to surrender your life because I am. And that's the point. And maybe that's why I processed it as something that wasn't going to be a big deal because, that's how he views football season. He's completely removing himself from his normal life for 6 months, although it still is nothing like being sent on a military deployment. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.